Okay, welcome everybody to today's event with Women Who Code Global, leveraging community coding experience to boost your resume. I'm so happy that you are all here. We're going to give people about 1 minute to get settled and join. So while you are settling in and we're waiting for all of the attendees, you can share in the chat, what are you navigating in your career right now? We'd love to know, like, are you coming because are you a recent hackathon participant? Did you just complete a personal project? We would love to hear that. And as just a little reminder, make sure that your chat is set to everybody, especially if you are making comments or wanting to support the panelists during this event, because it automatically just goes to us, but everyone wants to see your comments. So if you are just joining us, welcome again to our event. You can share where you're joining from or in what you're working on in the chat. We'll get started in 1 minute. And just as a reminder to keep your chat set to everyone, because it usually, when you sign on to Zoom, it will originally just go to panelists. Oh, we have Christine, who's coming from San Diego and is about to attempt her first hackathon on Friday. So this is very good timing. And as we were preparing for this event, there was some very good advice shared about what to think about when going into the hackathon. So I'm very excited that you're here, Christine. And Victoria's just getting started on her coding journey. And also we have some bootcamp people who are looking to refine their projects and continue on. Or they just did a hackathon. So welcome everybody. We're gonna get started now. My name is Anna Sherwilson. I'm the program manager for career navigation here at Women Who Code. And we are going to just a little bit about the event today. I'll be kind of your host with our wonderful panelists. We'll start with a informal kind of conversation about like why hackathons, what they can do. Two of our panelists have participated in a lot of them, and they'll share kind of why that's important. And then we'll move on to more of a workshop section of the event, led by our wonderful panelist, Keren, with using examples that audience members actually sent us. So to kick us off, I'm going to talk a little bit about Women Who Code. If you are a member and you've been to many of our events, you have likely heard this, but for everyone that's new, our mission is to empower diverse women to excel in technology careers. And to do this, we envision a world with a tech industry where diverse women and historically excluded people are thriving at every single level. So maybe you've joined this event because you're starting on your coding journey, but Women Who Code is absolutely here to stay with you throughout that journey as you become a leader, as you become a manager, and things like that. We do have a code of conduct that applies to every single one of our spaces, our hackathons, our online events like this, in-person, local events as well. And we take this code of conduct very seriously. It basically just states that we are an inclusive community and anyone that supports our mission is welcome and celebrated as part of this community. You can see a little bit more of our code of conduct here, but you can access the full version and also the incident report at womenwhocode.com/code of conduct. So again, if you're new, we have events all the time and we would love to see you. We're also going to talk a little bit about an upcoming hackathon that we're working on at the end of today. But if you go to womenwhocode.com/events, you'll see tons of both online and in-person events almost every single day. If you'd like to stay connected, Slack is a great way to join us. We post a lot of like our updates there as well. You can use this QR code, but we're also like all over the various social media at Women Who Code. So I am really excited to get this started with our conversation portion of today. I'm thrilled to welcome Sapphire Duffy, who is my colleague at Women Who Code and the Senior Community Manager, Shrishti Vaish, who is a business analyst at Numerator and also a track lead at Women Who Code Python, and also participated in a hackathon where Sapphire was her mentor. So it's a very beautiful full circle moment. And then also Keren Boiman, who is CEO and co-founder of Bullseye, and we'll hear a lot more about that later. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for this part and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation part of this. Um, so to get us started, let's talk a little bit about hackathons in general. So this question is for Shrishti and Sapphire. Let's start with you, Shrishti. You know, you talked a little bit to us about your own participation in a hackathon. So in your opinion, how do hackathon experiences specifically benefit career development for people just getting into coding?
Um, Thank you, Anna, and that's a great question. I think personally, if I speak, it actually helped me a lot in figuring out where I stand because I was just starting out into the analytics field and I didn't know where to start, where to begin with, what to begin with. So I thought getting into a hackathon, participating with people and working on a real world scenario, and hackathons are really time bound, so you actually work in a real world scenario.
Mhm.
So I think it's a great way to kickstart your journey, and especially I got to work on hands-on learning on a lot of stuff actually worked on, rather than just because I was starting. I was just learning different tools and programming languages in the analytics field. So I don't know where to practice those stuff. So participating in a hackathon, it really helped me. Taking a great idea, thinking about it, and then implementing it with all of the computer science skills, and then it definitely helped in a lot of skill enhancing. And definitely I put that up in my portfolio because it helped me bring up my collaborative skills. I learned how to network with people all around the globe. My teammates were all around the world. Our timings did not match. We had to set up
Mhm.
some time, and there's a lot of transferable skills that we learn. And I think that really helped me on. I knew where to, it's like figuring out where you stand, what you don't like, and maybe, okay, this is not my area, this is not my forte, and you know what kind of skills to focus on that can better help you with moving into or transitioning into a different tech field.
Mm. Absolutely. I guess same. Well, I'm going to change the question a little bit for Sapphire, but I know that I mean, when I invited you to do this panel, you said, I love hackathons. I can't wait. So I'm changing the question to why do you love hackathons? What makes you so excited about these opportunities and the ones that you attended as well?
Yeah, thank you, Anna and Shrishti. I love your answer. Like I piggyback on a lot of that there. It's such a good opportunity. But I love hackathons because of the learning opportunity and the connections that you make from hackathons. I was in my first year of university and I didn't like I was learning very, very, very start of my career and I wanted to try something new and I was like, what's a hackathon? Went to it on my own. But yeah, I love hackathons for like I guess the I guess the opportunities that it opens as well. So, you know, when you go at hackathons, you have make all those new connections with people. You know, for example, the Women Who Code one, you're making connections with people all around the world. When I did ones locally, I was introduced to a lot of new people as well. So I love the networking opportunity you get
Mhm.
like hackathons. So it encourages that teamwork and collaboration, and you get to work with people with diverse backgrounds, and there's opportunities to build your professional relationships and expand your network. And you know there is the exposure to mentors as well. So some hackathons, like Women to Code, involve industry experts and you know people from our community and helping each other and to provide that guidance as well. And it can be extremely beneficial for your career growth too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of hackathons because it really helped me at the start of my career.
Um, I have a follow-up question then. Did you, you know, before we get into kind of the phase about like common misconceptions, and I'm going to ask Karen about those, but do you, Sapphire, and then Shrishti, like, do you have any examples of when you were able to talk about your hackathon project, like during a job interview or to like get another kind of leadership position? Let's start with you, Sapphire.
Yeah, so I guess when I attended my first hackathon, like I said, it was at the beginning of my beginning of university when I started out in tech. I was very new and went on my own. So yeah, I guess when it came to my third year of university, when I was started applying for jobs, it really helped me talk a lot about the projects that I've worked on, and I was able to list a lot of like technology skills that I've learned, and it really helped secure my first internship, and the employers at the company like loved hearing about all of the technologies that I learned, and the fact that I worked with I was able to work on a problem and problem solve with other people. So yeah, yeah.
And then the same question for you, Shrishti, but you a little bit different. You mentioned that you had to work with like a lot of different time zones and like do all this project management things. And so how did that help you once you started working as a business analyst?
Oh, okay, that relates a lot because right now, even in my current job, all of my teammates are in the US. One is in the UK, and I'm in India. Our timings do not match. I think it helped me a lot, bringing in the quality of being agile and adaptable, because people are in different time zones with different perspectives and opinions. Understanding their personal and professional timings, and understanding how they work, and collaborating a lot, it helped me pick up those qualities when I participated in the hackathon first, because again at that time also I was with those teammates. They were on in different parts of the world, so we were working uh, we were sitting once or twice a day, and figuring out the details of the idea or the project, and then working on. So it has definitely, I've picked those qualities up gradually, and it has really helped me throughout in all of my job roles up till now.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit now. So you both shared like kind of all the learning that you could immediately apply to your professional life, but one step to like get that job is to kind of have a resume and get your resume reviewed. So I'm going to pass the next question to Karen. If there are any common misconceptions or mistakes that you think candidates make on their resumes, specifically when trying to highlight hackathon experience, but any experience. We can go more
Yes.
general.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna, for the question. Yes, and I've been researching the job search and the recruiting inefficiencies for 2 years before we started this company. And I can tell you that there are, quite a few misconceptions traditionally in how we look for a job. And I know that job search is very tedious and demoralizing, but what the common approach is, the spray and pray, which means, sending applications in the hundreds, many of them being not really relevant for what you're looking for, and kind of going by random across your job search, which is what we're trying to fix. Because we believe that that how you pick a job that you want to apply to needs to be very intentional about what the company does, read through the requirements, be able to understand if you actually can support with your resume each and every one of those requirements. And so what we believe is that the resume needs to be tailored and catered for each specific position. When you think about it, a recruiter reads your resume for on average 30 seconds. So that resume is your business card. It's the first thing that a person on the company sees. And it needs to be very quick, right, in terms of communicating why you are a perfect fit for the role. So that's, something that, we see in terms of misconceptions. And in terms of a hackathon, we'll talk about it later, but a hackathon, when you come out of a hackathon, or even when you go to a hackathon, you need to be intentional again about, what specific experience is it that I'm going to get from this hackathon, and map this to an area where you are trying to excel at, to learn more about, right? So this actually gives me more tools in my inbox, which I'm going to use later, for positions I apply to.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think that hackathons can be especially tricky because as Sapphire and Shrishti mentioned, like, it's a lot of fun and you can get like really wrapped up in your project. So I do appreciate like kind of that you want to be able to express like your enthusiasm and how excited you are about your hackathon, but your resume might not be the best place to do that. Before we get into the workshop section, we actually have a few questions that I think we can talk about right now. Stella wanted to know if you would recommend, I'm going to pass this to Sapphire because she already answered. Would you recommend a hackathon for software engineers like right out of a boot camp or of education?
Yeah, so I thought this question is a really good question. Thanks, Stella, for asking. So yeah, absolutely, you can participate hackathon at any level of experience. Like when I attended my first hackathon, I only started in tech and then I didn't know that much, and I was scared about putting myself out there, but it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, it led me to so many opportunities, such as meeting the Women Who Code Belfast team at the time, and probably to where I am now. So yeah, you can participate in a hackathon at any level, and putting yourself in the deep end is definitely helps you learn the best. Like, so it does. Yeah.
And I like another question we had was about our hackathons, like only intended for certain audiences and certain skills. And I thought that was a really good question. And I liked kind of when you're choosing a hackathon, I want to re-highlight what Keren said about being really intentional about what you want to get out of it. Because there are a lot of different roles that you can take in the hackathon. You can think about what skill gap maybe your resume has. So this is a question for Shrishti, like, did you have on your team, was it divided between kind of like the technical people on the team and project manager, or how did project management work? And did you feel like you got any project management skills out of the hackathon?
Yes, I think all of them agreed with me being the project manager because I was
Okay.
I was always like, we should our deadline is tight. We should get ready with the stuff and everything. I was, kind of taking the lead, even though it was my first hackathon and it was for everybody else's. But I know everyone's nervous, but I was kind of a little bit excited, so I thought, okay, I would take the lead. So I was creating, getting the pitch ready for submission, getting the form ready.
Shrishti has frozen, and so I'm
And
going to
everything.
invite. Oh.
Is everyone, am I audible?
You are audible. Your camera's frozen, but we can hear you. That's all that matters. Keep going. Perfect. I think we can hear you better now because you were telling a wonderful story. So if you want to finish it, I would love that.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just saying that I know everyone's nervous, and but I was kind of a bit excited too. So I took the lead and I said, okay, let's go ahead, and I would fill up the forms. I will create the pitch. I'll get the pitch ready for submission and submitting the forms, and taking the lead. And it's kind of managing everything, getting things ready, seeing what's missing in the project. Even though it was not a proper software related project, it was kind of related to blockchain and analytics. But again, it was a product, it was a service. It comes into that product life cycle. You need to get the idea, get the execution done, and then deploy it, or maybe just create a dashboard out of it. Whatever it is, you need to get the cycle ready before submission. So yes, I did learn a lot of things from that hackathon, from project management skills to communication skills, because in the end you have to present the pitch as well. You can't just create the PPT and just submit it. So yes, I would say there's a lot of transferable skills that you learn from the hackathon. It's not always hard skill specific. There are so many skills. I mean, when I actually think about it, it's also about how you learn what is the kind of approach you're taking to solve the problem. There are many recruiters who are also not just focused on a solution, but how you actually thought through it, and how you communicated that, and what was your logic. And there's just so many things other than just how you're applying the technical things into your project.
I see a few questions in the chat, one of which our colleague Stephanie answered, which was where to put a hackathon in your LinkedIn profile. And she recommends the project section with a link. One question before we move to the workshop area, I actually have a final question for Keren that I did not ask. When we were talking about like what to highlight on the resume and things like that, is there any difference about like if you've won an award in the hackathon, like is there a place for that on your resume, would you say?
Yeah, I think that would go under certifications section. That's where that would go. That's what I recommend. Also could go under projects, like mentioning a project and then saying, you've won an award on that one.
So thank you to everybody. I feel like there's a lot of energy in the chat, excited about, you've definitely, Sapphire and Shrishti, inspired everybody to like participate in a hackathon, which is, the goal. So now we're going to transition to more of the workshop section of today, but you are welcome to continue putting questions in the Q&A, questions about resumes for Keren. Keren's already very generously shared her LinkedIn in the chat, which we're very appreciative of. But for now, I'm going to ask Sapphire, we're about to get into a section that has like a lot of text on the slides. So we think that it would be really helpful if you follow along. So Sapphire has sent in the chat a copy of our slides, and we're going to talk a little bit about using real examples from the community and turning them into impact statements. So we'll start here very, very briefly. In our workshop section today, we're going to talk about two different examples of projects that audience members submitted. They actually recently participated in our hackathon for social good. I'll talk about that a little bit here. As we move towards the examples, this is just a quick introduction, is that this is an example resume from one of our volunteer leaders. And so you can see that she has a link, she has technology used and stuff like that. Actually, Sapphire, because of time, we're going to move on to the examples. So great. So well, let's get into these examples. So when everyone today signed up, they had the chance to submit their projects. I actually see the person that submitted one of these projects in our audience today, so I'm excited about that. If you are not coming to us from the Hackathon of Social Good, I just wanted to share a little bit of context of this hackathon that we just have. So the project goal was to create a brand new project featuring a social good cause and using at least one of the provided technical categories. The project had to be completed in a very fast-paced, accelerated timeline, so just within 10 days. And we have two example projects here that were submitted. So one is a mentorship platform, so you can see a little explanation of what the project is and the technology used. And then the other project is also a web app, which is like pen pals for vegan snacks. And then also the technologies used as well. And then they also submitted their results, which was that the mentorship app won second place. And then the snack pen pal app won a special award for the implementation of a project, of a specific technology in their project. So as Keren mentioned, the biggest mistake that you see is not tailoring to the job description. So for this workshop section, we have two different potential jobs. So let's take a moment here to look at these job descriptions. You can see that there are like very specific technologies, but also touching on a few of the things that Shrishti mentioned in terms of like agile project management, like working fast paced, being collaborative, and things like that. So I'm going to pass it over to Keren now to talk a little bit about what her recommendations would be on how to adapt projects to match these fake job descriptions. Before I move to the next, are you ready to move to the next slide, Keren, or is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. So what we kind of dissected here, we took first, we'll talk about the front-end engineer. It's an entry-level position. And what we did here is I took the previous slide, the content on the previous slide of the social good, the project called Personal Power AI, the mentorship program, and I tailored the impact or the outcome of that project to a specific requirement from the job description. So let's see, they are talking about proficient in web markup, particularly HTML5 and CSS3, things I know nothing about. And so what we see here is that that's what I was talking about before, thinking how we can best quantify the experience we gained from the hackathon to serve a specific requirement on the job description. So what we say here, and this is using the PSR format or the STAR format for how we are articulating a statement, a bullet point. So it says spearheaded front-end development, leveraging HTML. It talks about the specific technologies that we use to craft responsive, user-centric, leading to a second place, right? So what we're doing here is we're tailoring the impact, the result, the outcome of the hackathon to a specific job requirement. Now, let's take another basic requirement they mentioned here. Knowledge of cross-browser compatibility strategies, right? So for this one, I added a little bit of made up information about the hackathon, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to quantify the impact that this hackathon created to a, measurable numbers in terms of an impact. So what this says is successfully engineered, refined, cross-browser compatible features, so-and-so, leading to a 30% increase in user engagement across these platforms, right? Browsers. So this talks specifically about this. Look what we're mentioning here: knowledge across browsers. It mentions specifically the browsers we were working with, and it mentions the impact, 30% increase in user engagement across all of them. So it gives like, yes, you're definitely hitting the nail on the head. You're definitely hitting this requirement with this specific statement. This is what I'm talking about in terms of tailoring this to the requirement.
And before we move on, I just want to re-highlight something from our conversation that you mentioned that I thought was like the most impactful to me. Learning from you was that, yeah, really going in knowing that you need something quantifiable, because these were all like amazing projects. I happen to know that they're amazing projects because I've seen them. But as you mentioned, like the person reading it is not gonna know a lot. They just, we would love for them to have the same passions as we do, but they just aren't gonna know a lot. So as you said, you had to kind of, we invented some details because we didn't have them. And so knowing that you need these metrics to really make a strong impact on your resume can be helpful. Someone, I think it was Christine, is going to start a hackathon in 2 days. So think about that as you start, and also the hackathon that we're going to have coming up that we'll announce at the end. Are you ready to go on to the next one?
Yes, one last thing I would say is that if you guys are familiar with the problem solution result framework, thought framework, this is how these statements are articulated. So they talk about the problem this was trying to solve, but implicitly, right? This was trying to increase user engagement across these browsers. But we start off, if we think of a problem, then a solution, then a result, we start off by showcasing the result. So you successfully engineered and refined the cross-browser compatible features. Using, the hackathon is just a means of how you did it, but these are the outcomes. So there's a lot more resources we'll share later about how to use the PSR in each of those statements, but just to mention, this is how it's articulated.
Wonderful. I see some good questions that I'm going to ask. Follow-up question on this, but we'll talk about it after the next slide, Karen. Okay, here's another example.
Yes. Now, just to mention here, you see that if we look at the previous slide, it was front end, and this is back end engineers. Many times, people are full stack engineers, so thinking that I can submit to full stack or front end or back end with the same resume. If you look at the requirements here and the requirements on the previous slide, they're very different. Very different. I could be, shining with my resume for a specific position while not compatible at all for the next one, which you are compatible. It's just not mentioned like that in the resume. Okay. Now let's look at this backend engineer position. Now, again, I made up just, to give some more depth to in numbers, in quantifiable impacts that we've made through this hackathon. So we took the Snack app for this one, and it talks about they want knowledge of RESTful API development. So we talk about this specifically as a part of the experience from the hackathon, and also supported 100% uptime during peak usage. So it's not only knowledge of these of these frameworks, but it's also how you've put them to use, and what was the impact you were able to drive by putting them to use. Okay. Next, they're asking about familiarity. Remember, this is entry level position. They're asking about familiarity with cloud services. So we're as coming out of this hackathon, we've leveraged AWS services, so of the personal power AI mentorship. And we also, again, adding more quantifiable data of the outcome, facilitated 40% increase in concurrent users without loss of service quality, right? So these two examples show you how, and you won't add the number of bullets in terms of the number of requirements to the resume. That just gives you a sense of how you use a specific hackathon experience to tailor for the requirements, right? And you can do that for the most, the most important requirements in the job descriptions, which usually come on top.
Yeah, I think you were actually just answered the question I was about to ask you, is that this is the other bullet points in the job description is like, if you had to focus on certain one of them, it would be the ones on the top. And if this project doesn't match them, maybe it also shows that you have some more projects to work on, would you say?
Yes, exactly. And also, one statement can address multiple
Mm-hmm.
requirements on the job description.
I have another question for you that I really identify with, because we hear so much like recruiters are only looking at like 10 seconds at the resume, that kind of thing. And so some of like one participant is concerned that like, how do you know that your bullet point isn't too long? And you mentioned that this is not, we're not talking about formatting a resume here. We will share resources from Keren later, but if you're able to answer that question, like, how do you know if a bullet point is too long? Like, how do you kind of guess that answer?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, I think. These should be, you know, maybe 2 sentences, 1.5 long, not too much. It should be very easy on the eye to read. Think of it, the first person who reads your resume is a non-technical person.
Yeah.
If you go too much into the weeds, you're gonna, yes, they need to understand you have the technologies, but that should come under the skills section, those bullet points of skills that we're mentioning. So to answer your question, it should be very succinct, clear, and crisp. It should, again, the way to go about this is add as much measurable KPIs to your statements. That's how you make them rock solid, so you don't talk about like essay format bullet points. It's not around those lines. It should be very clear what's the problem that person solved and how they delivered their secret sauce to this.
Yeah. I have another question before we get into some other ones. I have some questions also for Shrishti and Sapphire about their experience, but this can be for everyone, but we'll start with you, Keren. I noticed, so we did include the results in the description of the projects, but only one of them mentioned that they, like in your examples, only one time do you mention that they won. So we have one question that says, what if we participated in a hackathon but didn't win? Do we need to say anything about that? Like, do we need to rephrase it?
Not at all. They may think, who won or, didn't take first place is pretty subjective, right? They're not familiar with the size of the hackathon, the scope. It's not something they would, primarily dive into. So I would focus more on the gained skill set from the hackathon, like the learned experience, like, again, going back to that toolbox. What are you able to do now that you weren't able to do 10 days ago before the hackathon? And not only like, learned technologies, right? And in a fast-paced environment, which is very important. But also like, how are you able to use these technologies to, save money to the company, do things much more efficient, reduce, product development cycle time from, by 30%. I'm just throwing out examples, right? So it's like, you learn a few skill sets, but then how you deploy them across real world scenarios. So that's it. I think the winning is obviously always nice, but for the purpose of the resume, focus on the deliverables, the outcomes of this.
That's actually a perfect segue to a couple of the questions that I've seen about like, how do you said like you need to be intentional going in, like about what can be quantifiable. So I'm going to pass this to Sapphire and Shrishti. Like, what kind of, when you did your projects, like what kind of quantifiable metrics did you use to talk about them? Keren touched on a little bit. I think some people are wondering like, well, I don't have users yet, so how can I like do that? But Keren touched on like shortening the project time and look for places that if it were a real company, what would save money. I loved that advice. Like, but yeah, Sapphire, any sort of quantitative impact that you used when thinking about your project?
I need a minute to think about this because
Okay.
it was many years ago. Shrishti wants to go first. That'd be
Both
great.
think about it. Yeah. The question is Shrishti, because I have other questions too, but if you have an answer, let's go to you.
I think what I think and what I've put in my resume a lot of times is sometimes it's not just quantifiable, but if you can show your achievements in a qualitative efficiency, there are some terms that you can mention and they do catch recruiters' eyes. I don't know. How much efficient your actions were, your projects were, or your job role was in that particular role or your profile. I think that also catches recruiters' eye. That's what I did when I got my first job. Whatever projects I did, I mentioned, I don't know how much, in what um, numeric percentage it affected positively the company, but I mentioned that I don't exactly remember the words I used in my first resume to get the job, but I used some qualitative action verbs to relay the message. I think that can also help to get an entry level job, or if you're switching or transitioning.
So we're going to transition. We actually do have a few minutes for more time for Q&A than I thought. So before I stop sharing my screen, I'll reshare it to announce the next hackathon and also some resources that Keren shared at the end. But is there anything about this sample job description and action statements, Keren, that you'd like to say before I take it off the screen?
No, we've covered it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm very excited about all of these. I'm frankly very excited about all these questions. And I know that there's some that Keren will be excited about because it matches kind of the project and company that she's working on right now. But I'd like to talk. One person asked, I just want to clarify something about the workshop thing that we just used, is that the bullet points are like, the job description is like a fake job ad. That's not from the resume itself. The things in the little boxes with the arrows is what Keren rewrote to put as a bullet point in your resume, not the other way around. So I just want to clarify that. But I have some questions for Shrishti and Sapphire in particular about participating in a hackathon but not finishing the project. So one person says, I recently participated in a hackathon where we worked really hard, communicated, we almost made something awesome. We just couldn't, the deadline was too fast, and no one is interested in continuing. Is there anything that can be salvaged from this experience for what I can put on my resume? Oh, I see people nodding, that's good. I don't have any other professional experience other than freelancing, so I really want to beef up my resume. Anyone is welcome to go first. I see everyone smiling.
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, again, there is experience learned in any path you take. If it ended up not succeeding and if it ended up succeeding, right? So I could use this experience to actually talk about in an interview. They ask you about, what things, didn't go as you planned, or, failures you want to talk about. So this could be a good experience to share in terms of, we tried to do this, we didn't have enough time. Thinking back, I would have changed, I would have done XYZ different. Like, for example, spending more time on planning in terms of project management. kind of a thing, right? In terms of timing, spent this time on that component, and, you know, just plan it ahead much more diligently. So that's how, just as an example of how to use that on your resume, on an interview tip. And of course, again, you participated in the hackathon, you spent time. You just, for example, if we don't know even how to quantify things, if you worked with people from different geographies, that's also something that can be, you know, mentioned and stated. That's real life scenario, right? You work with people across many geographies, many time zones. You have to, you know, manage stakeholders, different opinions, different cultures. That's a lot that you can take from a hackathon, even not finishing, going all the way through. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yes, and everyone, what about you, Shrishti?
I agree with Keren a lot, all of the words that she said, because I've done a few hackathons where along with me and a few teams, we did not finish the project. But I think what we did, we took the project as our own personal projects to put on the resume. We finished that later and put that on the resume. So even if we did not win, we did not submit the project, you can still use those projects, put them in your resume, use them as your experience. And definitely there are other skills, as Keren mentioned, being collaborative and also working in different time zones. There was I took part in a hackathon where not a hackathon, but basically a project that was for about a month, I guess. So we had divided the tasks, I guess 7 to 8 tasks, and then I took part in each and every of them because I wanted to learn all of them. But I could only finish the first two, and I did not complete any of the others. But still, I learned the first two. So it's fine if you do not fully participate. There's still so much to learn from these hackathons or these collaborative experiences.
Great. Here's a question from Rosella that I'm asking mostly because I have an answer to it, but I'm curious to know what other people think. And she's saying, I want to write a blog article about the hackathon experience and how collaboration helped me grow and experiment with new technologies. Just a little shout out that Women Who Code has a blog. We would love to hear from you. How to make it interesting for recruiters and potential employers as well as other developers. So yes, as Stephanie is putting in the chat, we would love your blog. I wanted to address this quick question really quickly from my point of view, which is less about like, this is a resume workshop. And so we might not fully answer your question today, but I do have to say that at Women Who Code, we get asked a lot about like personal brand. And so it does kind of matter. Like we do know the stories that recruiters are like really overwhelmed. They only spend 10 to 30 seconds looking, but there are recruiters that will Google you. Like there will be some. And so like establishing it's maybe not that they're going to read the whole thing and like, oh, like she said this, that's going to stand out to me. But what does mean is that you're like establishing an online presence. So that is my opinion. I wanted to know about what other people thought about that. I mean, you can just completely agree with me. That's also fine. I'll move on to another question. This one is for Sapphire, because you did your hackathon while you were still an undergraduate. Did you prepare or study at all for the hackathon? Gia wants to know, like, how do you suggest we study or prepare for hackathons so you can make sure that we can contribute?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think this is a great question. So it kind of depends on the hackathon. You know, if you know beforehand, like what like when you're applying for the hackathon, if there's any specific technologies in that hackathon that you need to learn beforehand, then yeah, you can definitely prepare for it. But there's other hackathons where, you know, it's not very specific technology, it's more open. And then when you meet your team, you kind of then discuss like what project you're going to build. So it depends on the hackathon. If there's certain technologies, then yes, you can prepare for that. For example, my first hackathon, there was no specific technologies, but it was very you form a team and then you pick what you want to build. And then my second hackathon, for example, it was all AI. I was in AI boot camp and we had a hackathon at the very end, so I could prepare for that. So yeah, it depends on the hackathon. So when you're applying for a hackathon, I recommend reading up on the specific details about the hackathon. And yeah.
Okay, our next question is for Keren. Switching back a little bit to resumes, creating a bespoke resume for every position you apply to isn't very scalable when you have to apply to hundreds of jobs. Keren and I have discussed this many times. Can you provide guidance on any tools or AI tools that can help facilitate tailoring your resume?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're working on. That's exactly our vision at Bullseye. We know it's not scalable, and any average job seeker, they don't have endless amount of time. Many times they're looking for a job while they're working. So our vision is to provide every job seeker an AI job hunter, but a personal job hunter that deeply gets to know you both on the technical level and beyond, knows everything about your background and your professional experience, and also about your aspirations. Where is it that you want to go? What does your career trajectory look like today, right? And then just recreates the resume for the job position you want to apply to from scratch, right? Based on all the information you provided, the resume, and so on and so forth. So this is, with AI, I believe that this actually makes it scalable. Up until now, this wasn't scalable. Like, I was talking with people who spent, few hours a day just tailoring, and many times overthinking, because this is not our job. Overthinking how am I going to tailor my resume for that specific position, right? Reading about the company, doing all that research, which is very important. It's just life is too short for that. So that's our vision. A lot of and we're working hard on putting the product out there. We have an initial product, initial MVP. And in the meantime, there's a lot of advice that we shared on the resources slide in terms of like guides, because right now we're doing this manually. And by the way, ChatGPT could be your BFF for that. And ChatGPT is like a wild beast. You have to tame it all the time. But for now, going through that exercise, which I did before, of this is the requirement, this is my resume, how do I, tailor this for that, and make sure ChatGPT doesn't make things up, because that's the usual way that goes about making stuff up. So that's why I'm saying you have to tame it, but definitely use that tool to your advantage. It can cut a lot of time in tailoring. And it can also actually help you in terms of what are the highlights? What is it that I need to highlight for that specific position? What is most important to them that, capabilities that I have? How can I bank on that? And how can I, put that in the summary statement? We talk about the bullet points. What about the summary? What about the cover letter? These are all ways, Anna was talking about before, building a personal brand. That resume is not just a piece of paper. This is a personal brand you are going to that company with. Okay, and again, that may have some tweaks going to different companies, different roles, a different personal brand. And that's a tailoring aspect of it. But yeah, that's why it's so important. Now, this will take you, if you do a good job on the resume part, This will take you all the way to the phone screen, you know, that personal brand, to the phone screen, to the interview, because these are exactly the points you'll talk about, you'll be asked about, and you'll talk about in terms of, again, that PSR, the problem solution result, how you use the hackathon. You, just to give an example, I identified a skill gap that I have. And I thought, you know, what's the best way to go about this, building real-time experience for that? You know, beyond just taking a course, I wanted to see how I can actually, you know, contribute to society even, you know, beyond just learning, how I can make this useful. So that's why I chose this hackathon over another one. Things like that.
Perfect. Thank you. So we are coming up on time. So I want to do two things. I want to make sure that I have a chance to announce our next hackathon. Many people were asking in the chat about that. And I want to thank all of our panelists as well. But someone asked in the chat something that we covered a little bit already about what aspects should we quantify. And I just want to remind everyone, I think our panelists were saying like timeline of project, amount of code, like communication, things like that. And if you're able to identify areas where, if it were a real company, where it would save money, is always a good plan. So on that note, I want to officially announce this will also be posted on our global Slack workspace as well, and put on our website very soon. But in just 10 days, we're going to have a weekend dedicated to building your first Android app. So the idea is that you do not need any Android experience at all. We are doing this with a partnership with Google Play, who is supporting us for that. And I would love to see you all there. When you register, you get immediate access to tons of Android resources. So I'm going to say this a million times. You do not need Android experience. Like, we want you to have no experience, a little experience too, sure, come on. But the goal is to diversify the Android community and diversify who has apps on the Google Play Store. And so the winner does get support to put their app on the store. So when you register, you get access to a ton of Women Who Code mobile videos about launching your first app. We'll also have a workshop about how to launch your first app live as well. We'll also, when you sign up, you get access to free ebooks about Android development. Like, really, we're here for you. You can do this. It's going to be an intense weekend, but you can absolutely do it. So my colleagues are putting all the links in the chat. I look forward to, you can sign up now without having an idea. Like, you don't need to have the idea, just sign up to access the resources. And I look forward to seeing you there. So as a reminder, we have the slides are shared. You're also going to get an automatic email up after this with the links to this hackathon as well. So on that note, I really want to thank everybody for all of the panelists for kind of diving in to this hybrid workshop panel experience. I'm really, really appreciative. Keren, I'm so appreciative to all of the advice and the generosity of your time with the community. Same with Shrishti and Sapphire. So on that note, we've reached the time, and thank you all so much.
Thank you for hosting this. This was a true pleasure for me, meeting all these amazing folks who are contributing to society, their time and their skills, and hope we meet again.
Yes, I'm excited about it. So thank you, everybody. And thank you to our audience. We'll be ending the webinar now. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.